biển, là một bãi biển, đến một cái khoảng đất trống thì ông ta vẽ trên đất này, vẽ trên đất chữ x gì, vẽ trên đất chữ x. Và ông ta nói với đứa trẻ rằng là and the grandfather said that this turned out and
One of the tenets of ALG is that much of understanding, much of communication is non-verbal, it's non-linguistic. And that's why we concentrate on things like pictures, voice modulation, hand gestures, and Phuong's doing a really good job of that. Another point that ALG makes is that language is cultural. You can't separate language from culture, you can't separate culture from language. You can't know a foreign culture till you know that language, and by the same token, if you don't understand the culture, you will never understand the language. So, for example, in Vietnamese it's very important which position in the family you hold. Are you the older brother? Are you the younger sister? Are you the older sister? Are you the oldest in the family, the youngest? M. The word M in Vietnamese means younger brother, or at least that's how it's translated in dictionaries. But actually, M means younger brother, it means younger sister. It means a younger associate. It means a person of lower status. It has 1,000 meanings ascribed to it, none of which exist in the English language. But someone has foolishly translated it as younger brother or sister. When I say younger or brother or sister to an English native speaker, it suggests exactly that, a younger brother or sister. When I say M to someone in Vietnam, it has a completely different set of meanings attached to it. So there's no such thing as a translation. And there's no way you can understand a language till you understand the culture. So the beauty of this method, of this picture story method, is that we can take cultural stories, historical stories, legends, things from the past, from this country's past, from the shared history of these people, and we can present it to a language learner to help them understand the culture and at the same time to learn the language, but to learn it in context. And once again, to learn it within a cultural context, which at the end of the day is the only way that anyone can learn anything.
Thế nhưng mà cái từ đấy cậu ta học rất là trong, để mỗi ngày cậu ta học được rất là nhiều điều mới mẻ và cậu ta có thể đổ thêm cát vào đây. Thế nhưng mà một tháng sau thì tự dưng ông nội thấy cậu bé buồn thỉu buồn thiu. Ông nội thấy cậu bé rất là buồn. Ông ấy hỏi vì sao? Nên cậu bé nói là
I studied applied linguistics translation at the University of Mainz in Germersheim, Germany, and worked as a translator in Europe for 4 years. In that course, we were taught that there is really no such thing as a translation, with the exception of a few very basic nouns and verbs. There's really no such thing as a translation because there are cultural meanings ascribed to words, concepts, and phrases, and they're almost non-translatable. The beauty of learning a language naturally through natural language acquisition is that you don't have to translate inside your brain. You just understand something for what it is. One example would be my father, when I was first studying in Europe, my father taught me a very cumbersome method for translating or converting Celsius to Fahrenheit. That way I would know how to dress every day while I was going to school in Germany. And it involved something like the square root of 8 million times pi or some weird thing, and I couldn't do it. And they told me one day, Antonio, it's 3 degrees outside. And I walked outside and it was bloody cold. So I went back in and I put on a jacket, and I just remembered, okay, 3 degrees is bloody cold. And then in summertime when it was really hot, when I turned on the air conditioner in Taiwan, I saw that I was really comfortable when I set the air conditioner at 24 degrees. So I decided, well, 24 degrees is comfortable room temperature, 3 degrees is bloody cold. And then when I was training in Cambodia, I just was sweating and losing fluid by the second, and I looked over at the thermometer and it was 38 degrees. So I decided, okay, 38 degrees is unbelievably hot. And that's it. And I just sort of use those reference points. And I know 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling, but you never actually get up to that. One of the story is I have no idea how to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, but I always know exactly how to dress. I know what to expect when somebody tells me that the temperature is 14 degrees or 24 degrees or 32 degrees.
Lúc nào các cháu học kiến thức thì các cháu đổ cát vào đầu mình. Nên nếu mà các cháu không có một cái định hướng rõ ràng, không có một cái khuôn rõ ràng, thì rõ ràng là những cái kiến thức này nó sẽ trôi hết ra. Đấy, trôi hết ra những hạt cát này.
You just live with it, and it's that way with the language. People who learn language naturally don't translate. They just live with it. They just exist with it. They allow it to be what it is. Now, the downside of that is if you are trying to produce a translator, natural language acquisition may not be the best way. Probably is not the best way to do it because the synapses will not develop. There won't be these cross synapses of linking one thing in one language to something in the other language. However, if you want to produce people that have native-like pronunciation and listening comprehension, natural language acquisition is the best way to go. Now, the program takes a long time. It takes about 800 hours of listening. I don't know that any research has been done on Vietnamese language, but from what I've seen already, it looks like it's much harder than Chinese, and I have to believe that it's going to take even more listening. It's a Hmong Khmer language. They have more vowel sounds, they have more unusual sounds than other languages that I've studied. It reminds me a lot of Khmer in that sense, except that Khmer is not tonal. So you need countless hours of listening. People ask me what is the fastest way to learn a language. People have suggested, can't you just memorize some phrases and words and go about it that way? And the answer is, the fastest way to learn a language would be to sit down and memorize phrases and words. And if you could learn, 30 new words a day, there's 30 days in a month, that's 1,000 words. At the end of 4 months, maybe you could read a newspaper. It's possible. I don't know for an Asian language it'll work quite that simply. But the point is, you would just be memorizing words and phrases, and you're not actually learning the language. And it's a really important point. With natural language acquisition, you are learning the language. So I see with my coworkers in Vietnam, a lot of them have memorized phrases. They can say, how much is it? They can understand the answer. They can ask basic directions, things like this. And I can't yet. But I've already seen that I am learning the language, and they aren't. And they won't. And on a long enough timeline, the people that learned by way of learning phrases and learning vocabulary lists and things like that, if you extend an unlimited timeline, 1,000 years, they're only going to reach a certain level of fluency and never progress beyond it. Never, ever, ever in a million years. And I've seen people like that. I've seen people that speak fluidly where everything is wrong. Every bit of grammar is wrong. They're misunderstanding so many nuances of what's being said to them, and after only a few weeks or a few months of study, you're already starting to see all the holes and chinks in their armor. Natural language acquisition is obviously not for everyone. You have to decide what your goal is, but if your goal is to achieve native-like pronunciation and listening, then it's the way to go. And with a language like Vietnamese, if you're not dead on with your pronunciation, you're going to be way off. It has 6 tones, and then it has all the vowel stress issues of, say, the Khmer language or other Hmong Khmer languages. Then you've got the grammar, you've got the registers of speech, you've got so many things that make it a very difficult language. And if you're not saying things correctly, people really will not understand you. They'll understand that you're saying a completely different word. As I teach English in a traditional program here in Vietnam, and my students ask me, teacher, you practice Vietnamese Kung Fu every day, but you said your teacher can't speak Vietnamese. How do you communicate with him? I said, I communicate with him because I want to, because I need to. I just force myself to communicate with him. I force myself to understand because I need to know it. I need to communicate with him. There are thousands of languages in the world, and if you're going to wait until you can actually speak them before you start communicating with people, then you're going to be very limited in the people you can communicate with, and there's only so many languages you can learn. So in the case of my teacher, my options are I could start studying martial art now and just force my brain to accept it, or I can wait 2 years till I can speak Vietnamese and then start studying Vietnamese martial art, and that doesn't make as much sense to me. Did you understand? Okay, who can tell the story again? Who can come and tell again in Vietnamese? Yeah, oh, okay. Not so nervous.
Có một người cha làm nghề đi biển. Khi mà người cha qua đời